My name is Daniela. I am the Marketing and Business Development Manager at LucaPlus. As you can see, we've got 4 speakers here today. First, we're going to kick off with Kate Carnell, Small Business and Family Ombudsman. Kate has been a powerful advocate for small business since her appointment in 2016. Kate has delivered more than 20 inquiries, reviews and research reports into key issues impacting the small business sector, and has made over 300 submissions to government to ensure the small business voice is heard. How are you today, Kate?
I am very well, thank you very much. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here speaking about something that really matters to business and to small business generally. Now, I'm sitting in an airport, so I apologise if there's sort of announcements for flights, but we don't have many of those anymore, so maybe that won't be as bad as it normally would be. But and Daniela is going to change the slides for me. So we might go to the first slide. And I think going to the first slide is fundamental because, let's be fair, if the COVID-19 crisis has taught us anything, it's fundamentally that the future is digital, but more and as importantly, it's about cash flow. So although many of us have been working on e-invoicing for a long time, I suppose COVID, if there's been an upside for COVID, it's that that we now know that there is no choice but to go down the digital path. And if we want to do something about cash flow generally, payment times, being paid quicker, a range of other things that I'll talk about in a minute, e-invoicing is fundamental to that. In fact, you know, what's happened during COVID in the small business space is that, that's fine, go to that next one, Danielle, is that payment times have got worse, not surprisingly, but still payment times have got worse, but small businesses have digitised, have probably done about 10 years worth of digitisation in 12 months, and fundamentally because they've had to. The businesses that have done well are the ones that have moved online, that are communicating with their customers online, that are selling their products and their services, are using social media efficiently, and so on and so forth. But let's have a bit of a look at the whole issue of cash flow and invoices generally. Many of you will know these figures pretty well. They're a couple of years old now, but they won't have changed much. You know, 1.2 billion invoices exchanged each year in Australia. But the thing that's really interesting here is, why are businesses paid late? Well, 20% of invoices go to the wrong person. So, you know, whether it's in snail mail or email, they go to the wrong place. 30% of incorrect information, so the payment will be slowed down. And the work that was done back in the day, a few years ago, but I'm sure again it hasn't changed that much. The cost of a paper invoice, $30.87, a PDF invoice, $27.97, and an e-invoice, $9.18. So the figures that we put to the sorry, just it's a problem of an airport. So the figures that we put to Treasury a number of years ago to convince them that this was a good thing showed a serious positive to the Australian economy. And let's be fair, now we need that you know, that benefits to the Australian economy more than ever before. I think that the point I wanted to make is that regularly we talk to small businesses and they'll say things like, oh, we already do e-invoicing. We send invoices by email. We send PDFs via email. So there's still a lack of real knowledge about what e-invoicing is. And that's important. So next slide there would be good. So just quickly, you know, the benefits of e-invoicing for business generally, but in the SME space particularly, faster payments are the thing that matters most, which of course is about cash flow. Security really matters, and the importance of that is escalating. The fact that you overcome some of those issues that I spoke about on the last slide of invoices going to the wrong person, that they're not being, there's something wrong with the invoice, and it can be something pretty minor that can slow down payment. So look, it reduces costs, it increases productivity, and the thing that is raising in importance here is the issue around cyber risk. So let's just go to the next slide here. Thanks. So these are Scam Watch figures, which come from the ACCC. If you have a look at the thing right at the top, it's false billing now, you know, above, you know, a range of the scams that, you know, we're a bit more used to. So now, you know, cyber criminals intercepting invoices, you know, changing BSB numbers, you know, there's huge numbers of ways this is done, but you can see now it's the thing that's causing the most issues. And just recent data in terms of cyber crimes or cyber invasions on business generally, 2 out of every 5 cyber crimes, shall we say, or cyber incursions are happening on small businesses. So small businesses now are, you know, right in the headlights, shall we say, for cyber criminals, simply because their levels of security are lower. So e-invoicing, a real positive in this space. So let's go to the next slide. But what are the challenges? Why hasn't it just happened? Well, it should have just happened. I'm sure Mark will talk about that in a minute. But, you know, it is a change. You do need to move your systems. Up until recently, there was a perception that, you know, that e-invoicing was a real, was difficult to do. And of course now with Myob, Xero, other software accountancy packages that the majority of small businesses have got, will be or are, depends on the company, E-invoice enables. So a range of the concerns, you know, in this space are now overcome. But I think the thing I should have put down at the bottom here is the challenges is knowledge in the small business space of what e-invoicing is. I made the point about, you know, perception that a PDF sent on the email was somehow, you know, e-invoicing. And so I think we've got an education issue in terms of the challenges generally. So next one, Danielle. Payment times is a huge issue in the business space generally. When I took over this role 5 years ago, in fact nearly exactly 5 years ago, we went out to the small business community, and my office handles businesses with less than 100 employees. That's 99% of businesses in Australia. 2.3 million trading businesses fall into that space, so it's lots. I thought that businesses would say, well, Kate, what we want you to focus on is, you know, industrial relations, a whole range of those, sort of the tax system and so on. But the thing that was right up at the top of concern for small businesses was payment times. And that was, you know, big businesses, governments and so on paying small businesses really slowly. This piece of research was done a couple of years ago, but you know, it found that, and this was, I think there was 10 million invoices were looked at for this piece of research. So it's the biggest piece of research that's been done, and found that 53% of invoices were paid late. The average lateness was 23 days. The amount of money tied up in those invoices was 115 billion. You know, if they were paid on time, $7 billion more into the economy. You know, all of these figures, they're compelling, but you have to remember what this actually means in small business land. I know that I've spoken to some of the macro economists in Treasury over the years, and they've said, yeah, Kate, but you know, you pay quicker and it's a one-off hit. But of course, it's not a one-off hit in small business land, because you have to pay your staff, you know, weekly or fortnightly. You have to pay your landlord. You have to pay your suppliers. You don't get to pay them late inside the law. I mean, in fact, you can't pay them late. And so if you're sweating on bills being paid and they're being paid late, and that 23 days is 23 days longer than usually 30 days, which is a normal scenario. So you're talking, you know, quite a number of quite a long time outside a normal, you know, 30 days or less payment times. It means that small businesses aren't in a position to invest in their business, you know, to buy that extra stock, to get involved, you know, to take up a particular, you know, special or invest, because you're just never sure about when you're going to get paid, and that impacts upon businesses' capacity to grow their business and to invest in their business. So this stuff really, really matters. So let's just go to the next slide. As I said, that particular, thanks. That particular data was a couple of years old. This is this is data right now from Creditor Watch, just came out in the last couple of days for January, the January figures, and you can see that payment times got worse in 12 out of 19 sectors. You can see the first column is days overdue in January last year, and now you can see the days overdue in January this year, and you know, last month. You know, this is a huge problem for businesses generally. So let's go to the next one. Thanks. What does all this mean? Well, you know, the great bit about e-invoicing is, as you know, there's no, you know, it's more efficient, it's quicker. The federal government, and for that matter, New South Wales government and others, have indicated that they will pay in 5 days if on the basis of e-invoicing being used, which is fantastic, and fundamentally changes the game for small businesses generally. I wanted to just talk about global for a moment, because the other feedback I often get from business, even big businesses, which should know better, but certainly from small business and government, is somehow, you know, oh, okay, this is a big change, you know, it's something that, you know, is really hard. Australia is so far behind the game on this that, you know, we've got to realise that, you know, places like, you know, lots of countries in South America, Italy, the Scandinavian countries, whole range of places, and this was just a few to show that, particularly in the business to government space, e-invoicing is standard practice and is being adopted globally really quickly. Now, it is great that Australia is starting to catch up. So can I go to the next slide, Daniela? That'd be great. Okay, so what's happening with e-invoicing in Australia? And I'm sure other speakers will speak more about that. After lots of agony, Mark, you can talk about agony, the Payroll online framework was adopted in 2019, and now we've got a commitment by the federal government that that federal government agencies will have to use e-invoicing by July next year. And I was really pleased to see Myob Greg Ellis say, look, let's bring that forward and let's see the business to business relationships sped up as well, because there's no commitment in that space at all. So it won't be at this stage until the middle of next year for us to see the business to government transaction mandated. But I would agree with Myob that, pulling that forward as far as we can to help speed up the economy, to help with the economic recovery that we all need so much. And let's mandate business to business transactions as well. Next slide. These are some Myob figures of, of businesses, 53% of businesses, 61% of sole traders are calling for business to business invoicing, e-invoicing to be mandated. That figure, the 43% of small businesses have heard about e-invoicing. Unfortunately, there's the 57% that haven't, and we've got a chunk of work to do in that space. The ones that know about it and understand e-invoicing understand just what a time saver it is and how much time it will save. It's certainly true that businesses that are digitally enabled are much more likely to understand the issues surrounding e-invoicing generally. But, again, as I said, what's happened over the last 12 months is significantly more businesses are now digitally enabled. That's happening really quickly, and it's happening for obviously, absolute necessity to keep their businesses afloat during shutdowns and the COVID issue. But also there have been other things that happened before COVID, things like single touch payroll being mandated. For businesses, they have to be using single touch payroll, which means you need to be sending your information about your PAYG withholding and superannuation electronically, not in a PDF, electronically to the ATO. The majority of middle-sized to bigger businesses have adopted, because legislatively they have to, it's the law, but it's also the law for smaller businesses. Some smaller businesses are still using their accountants or their bookkeepers to do it for them, but the time is running out for those sort of exemptions. So everyone needs to have a level of digital capacity inside their business and being able to use e-invoicing for that purpose. But I just want to talk a bit about, just really briefly, that e-invoicing is really important. It's important for all the reasons I've talked about, but it's part of a broader digital future for business, which includes, integrating e-invoicing with procurement, with financing, with inventory control, with logistics, and in the global space with trade facilitation, a whole range of things. And all of this improves productivity, cuts your costs, and makes your business more competitive. And that's, for me, what this is about. That will be the last slide, I think. So I'm available for questions, and I think there's a couple, Daniela, that you've put in place.
Yes, we've got a couple of minutes, so thank you for that, Kate. The first question that came through for when people were registering for the event was, is there a negative or positive impact in using e-invoicing?
Look, as I said, I think it's only positive now. Possibly, when businesses weren't as digitised as they are now, when the Myobs and the Xeros and, the other platforms weren't e-invoicing enabled, and Peppel enabled. You know, when all of that infrastructure wasn't there, I accept the challenges of adoption were high. Now those aren't there, and so it's hard to see the negatives. And the point I made in the presentation about the importance of security and the cyber issues, the cyber crime issues in this space, to me have really escalated in importance from the times when we were talking about e-invoicing, you know, a few years ago. You know, this is now a major issue for small businesses. So for me, there are only positives in this space. I haven't spoken as much as I'm hopefully others will on the business-to-business arena. I think there's going to be some interesting issues for some of the bigger businesses that already have their own systems in place and have been reticent to move to the PEPL standard because it's not in line with their proprietary processes. But I think that's why you know, doing what a number of countries have done, and that is to mandate business to business as well as government to business, is pretty important here. You know, I've spoken, for me, the two major problems that are solved here, you know, are payment times and cyber stuff. But on the last slide, I made the point that businesses who understand this space reckon it will, you know, will save them the equivalent of a working week each year. Taking into account how time poor SMEs are, this is huge. That's a week you could spend with your family. It's a week you could spend investing in your business. This is big. So reducing, can we say red tape, but reducing actual time and freeing up time to, you know, maybe be a bit more strategic in your business, or, you know, again, spending time with your family or the things you really want to do is pretty important here in my view. I think what was the last question, Daniela? I forgot.
The last question about funding. What are your two views on that?
Well, you know, there's two ways of looking at this. If government, I think the first thing government's got to do is actually get off their backsides and get e-invoicing really happening and incentivising it by really quick payment times. We talk about 5 days, but there's nothing to stop it being immediate. So, you know, government paying quickly really, you know, is a funding benefit, certainly for the business perspective. But it is, I think it's actually in the interests of governments generally to hype up their incentives, and these could possibly be tax incentives to the transition to e-invoicing, because it will deliver such a benefit to the economy at a time when we desperately need it. Now, we're seeing some state governments, New South Wales just in the last week, I think Victoria as well, coming up with small grants for digitisation in the space. So let's hope e-invoicing is very much a part of that. So I think there's more work to be done there, but mostly small businesses particularly will respond to being paid quicker, which is the reason the big businesses, you know, that have lots of suppliers in the small business space really need to be part of that. You know, the Woolworths, the Coles, the large operators in transport and all sorts of things. Yes. If we can speed up payment times in this country, we can change the game for lots of small businesses. So thank you, Daniela.
Well, thank you for joining us today, Kate, and I'm sure our attendees have got a few questions, but Kate has kindly agreed to respond to those questions early next week. and we will respond individually to the individuals who have taken the time to submit their questions. So thank you for joining us today, Kate.
It's a pleasure.
Next speaker is Mark Stockwell, Acting Assistant Commissioner. Mark is currently responsible for digital partnerships and strategy, covering the Digital Partnership Office, as well as e-invoicing and the ATO strategy and governance. Over the last 2 years, Mark has been leading delivery of the Trans-Tasman E-invoicing initiative in partnership with the New Zealand government. E-invoicing is estimated to result in economy-wide benefits of up to $28 billion over 10 years. How are you, Mark, today? Thank you for joining us.
Daniela, and hello everyone else. Really a pleasure to be here. I'm going to cover off a little bit what Kate was talking about. I mean, for people who don't know some of Kate's background, she's been a very strong champion for e-invoicing now for several years. We really thank her for that. I need to get off my backside, she told me, I heard that then, so I need to get a wriggle on after this. But I will be able to talk through a little bit, expand a little bit more on what Kate was sharing with you. I'll talk about a bit more about the actual network and how invoicing works, and I'll give people a snapshot of where we are today here in Australia with the status of e-invoicing and where I see it moving in the coming months. So that's what I'm going to cover off. So firstly, on the first slide, Daniela, is about why haven't we adopted e-invoicing a little bit quicker? So, as Kate said, we've been talking about this for a few years. 2016, in fact, we started talking about e-invoicing here in Australia, seriously. At that time, there was a report we'd commissioned with Deloitte Economics, and that gave us the foundation to those figures that Kate spoke about before. And on the slide, I've got the same slide. We all use the same slides because there hasn't been an interim set of research. But the driver behind that, what it told government is that small business or business needed greater productivity benefits and they need more digitisation of business. That was the high level takeaways. And what was driving that was a few things. And Kate again touched on it, the cost of manual operations. As she talked about the $30 versus $9, 70% better off. I think Kate summed it up well right at the end there when she was talking about that productivity benefit. It's somewhere in the realm of a week or even longer for the average business that you're saving if you move to this type of solution. Or equivalently, if you're using a bookkeeper or someone or paying someone to do it, it is thousands of dollars per year you can save by shifting subtly to the new process. We know historically that PDFs and OCR technology for more sophisticated businesses were a step change over the last few years for business. We also know that large business particularly had ventured into the realm of EDI type solutions, where these are more for the large end of town, fairly sophisticated business, high volume. But what happened with that was that they all went off, did their own bespoke standards for that EDI solution, where generally a business person had to get into their portal and work on their systems. And that became a real burden for those people who had multiple purchases of their goods or services and had to then interact with several different processes, several different systems. So that was a real burden for a bunch of the community. So with that, we also looked at payment times. And Kate, big advocate of payment times, as you heard, so I'm not going to go over that again, but I'll give you a couple of other stats that support that. So in 2017, the US did a fairly intensive study around payment times. And it showed that if using an electronic invoice, it was about 92% were paid on time versus only 45% in the traditional manner. So that's a very clear statistic. But more closer to home, more recently, we've got a large utility. I think they're happy to call out the name, BOC Gas. Now they have supply gas to a couple of 100,000 businesses around Australia. What they've seen, they've adopted e-invoicing, which is fantastic. But their case study showed that they were getting paid as they send out their invoices to their businesses about 7 days on average, or 50% quicker than what they had using the traditional email PDF process. So I think the benefits are overwhelmingly positive. It's just about, as Kate said, getting people to understand what is invoicing and what are the benefits they will achieve through going through the change process. One other point we've learned too is about smaller businesses where they're not as digitally adept as some of the other people who have adopted accounting packages, as she called out. They feel that they're trapped in a non-digital world because they don't see the need for it. And what that means for them is they're locked into that paper manual way of doing business, and therefore they don't actually get the streamlined efficiency that a digital world does. The good thing about e-invoicing though is that we do know that there will be solutions in the market to accommodate that. So where a business who's traditionally paper and they can't make that transition for whatever reason to the digital world, there will be some solutions that are very simple and be able to support that type of business. So I'm very pleased about that. The other point I would make is that e-invoicing is not just about sending an email and PDF one way. It's about the receiving of that and processing of that invoice as well. It is also about having more sophistication in the marketplace. So, the full procure-to-pay suite of business processes, all the different trading documents that you'd need to actually have that type of interaction with in your supply chain. Might be catalogues, might be remittance notices, purchase orders, etc. So all that are built into the solution. Before I go in too much further, I want to talk about what is e-invoicing. I was really intrigued, if Daniela would jump to the next slide, that a few stats that we saw before from Myob and about the awareness of e-invoicing. And it said there 47, I think, percent or something were aware of it. I know when we talk to people, there is still a bit of misconception about the term e-invoice. So I just want to make sure we're on the same page for participants here, and you can share that with your network or your supply chain as well, is that, and it's easy to explain it in the reverse, and it's saying what it is not. Traditionally, in 80% of the time, we have an email attached by a PDF, gets sent through the system. It then has some OCR treatment or process done to the receiving end before it's then put into for payment. And that's about the traditional way, about 80%. But really what e-invoicing about is, I'll use the definition here, an automated, secure exchange of a message between the buyers and the suppliers' business systems via network. A bit of a mouthful, but I'll break that down. So you've got a computer readable file, being the invoice. It is structured, standardized type of inputs that's then transmitted through an agreed standard. And that standard we've adopted is an international standard here in Australia and New Zealand called Payroll, and I'll talk about that shortly. But what it goes through the Payroll network and then is actually received in that same structured, consistent way for processing. And what that does, it removes all the manual process that would normally occur when you move an invoice between two parties. And that's realistically what it is about, taking away the manual intervention. It's a common language, I put it, between two systems. Those systems don't have to be the same. They can be different, but that's the beauty of how the system would operate. So if I think about if I'm maybe a supplier to someone, it's about I don't have to use my email system anymore. I don't have to create that PDF, and I don't have to chase up lost invoices when my buyer says I've lost it. On the receiving side, what it means is I'm going to receive a very structured, consistent, clean, well-structured, secure data file. And what that means, I can process that as efficiently as possible. Yes, I will have to actually then do some reconciliation that was the goods and services I thought I'd purchased, and also to check that I've got the right payment processes in place. I'll talk about that shortly. Other thing you won't have to do when you're receiving, you won't have to do that printing out of that scanned PDF. You won't have to apply the OCR treatment and then check the conversions were right to make sure it is all good as you'd hoped it to be. So that's some of the, I won't call it red tape, it's more than that. It's process and time that it actually takes out of the process. The key thing that I would re-emphasize to people is you still are in control. Some people say to me, oh, the machines are taking over, payment's going to happen automatically. Well, no, they're not. You're in control of your requirements. Yes, you'll receive a digital invoice, but then it's up to you about how you then process that most efficiently and with authority that you know you're paying the right person. Kate, on the next slide, Danielle, she touched on a number of benefits. I'm not going to go over those benefits, but just to emphasise a couple from a government perspective. And the first one is about faster payments. Yes, it is a massive burden, and you do see the correlation between manual processing versus digital and the efficiencies. We still believe it will fasten up payments, and that case study of BOC Gas kind of echoes that. The other things, though, we recognise, though, is that as a type of incentive to suppliers to government, faster payment times is one way of incentivising. And the 5-day payments has been in place now for, trying to think when that started, 1 January last year, I should say. Also, that was mirrored by New South Wales in the middle of last year, also having the 5-day payments. And so what that does is, I think, really shows a signal to the rest of the business, large business particularly, that government is serious and you can actually achieve a 5-day payment. People in large business say that is impossible, you can't do it. You need too many checks and balances to achieve that. But through the digitisation, getting the clean information, there's no follow-up, a lot of follow-up, which costs the time and effort. You can achieve 5 days, and the government is proving that already. And I'll give a stat on that shortly. The other point I'd say about is the 24/7. It doesn't mean you as a business has to be open 24/7. It means the network is live and active, and it can go through any time. Another advantage of the 24/7, of course, is when you're trading internationally, that invoices will come through to your systems, or you'll be pushing out at different times of the night and day, so that you'll see that your trading partners and supply chain will always be active. The last one is security, and I can't emphasise that enough, and Kate gave some really great examples about that. And there's some really damning statistics that come through in the last 12 months about particularly cybercrime. About a 200% increase in instances of cybercrime last year. Obviously, people trying to take advantage of people during the pandemic, but we don't expect that level of growth of cybercrime to diminish. If anything, it's only going to increase, and hence we need to do all we possibly can to minimise the impact of use of the email system, which is the common trigger that fraudsters use to actually attack us. The other point I would say is about benefits is we didn't speak about, Kate hadn't mentioned, was about better business decisions. By having a digital interface, you're able to then have better records of invoices going in and out, some patterns, better understand your supply chain so you can make more informed decisions with your trading partners. And last one, eco-friendly. Pretty obvious, if you've got a system which doesn't use paper, you're saving on storage, you're using less energy, resources, physical storage space is reduced. And lastly, which really resonates with last year's COVID, is that there's no manual processing. You can actually don't have to do it in the office if you don't need to. It can be done at home or in a remote location because it is all digital. I'll backtrack now on the next slide just a little bit, Daniela, and just give us a bit more context to why we went with an international standard called Payroll and how does the network operate. So as Kate mentioned, we started this a few years ago. The government came to us in late 2018 asking, well, it's great that we're having a domestic type of arrangement with New Zealand as we started on approach there, but I'd really like a small business in Australia to be able to trade more easily globally as well. And hence, a decision was taken to adopt an international standard called Payroll, and that was instigated early 2019. The reason behind Payroll is the current stats show it's in about 34 countries. However, there is about instances we know of about 100 countries which does some form of e-invoicing, not exactly the same standard, but a lot of them are bespoke single countries where they know that e-invoicing does provide an economic benefit to a country or a compliance benefit in some cases. But so they've embarked on that by their own, with their own country. The beauty of Payroll, though, is obviously you've got the interoperability with trading partners in other countries. unable to do so. And we see that it's growing rapidly at the moment. So in the Asia-Pac area where we are, obviously with Singapore, us, New Zealand in recent years, there's a couple of others very close to signing up to using e-invoicing as well. Other growth area right at the moment is the Middle East. Several countries there are looking at e-invoicing. The big ones we're waiting for is in US and Canada. I know they're at proof of concept stage, so they're actually well advanced. So we expect them, I'd say in the next year or two, I would expect them to see invoicing operating and open to supply chain here in Australia is what we'd hope. The origin of the standard is from government to business to government procurement. So it's got that foundation, but everyone could see the extensibility through to business to business. And over the last several years, we've now seen that in several of those countries, in Europe particularly, are now operating in a business to business environment. The other part is just to better understand, for those who like to know the detail, a little bit about the network and how it operates. So people would be familiar, as we talked about, with those EDI type of solutions where you've got two parties using a portal in the middle of it, using the same system, therefore, to actually move a transaction between the two. Whereas what we're talking about here is a four-corner model. Now, the four-corner model is something that operates today in our telecommunications industry, in our banking industry, where I'm making a phone call from someone using my Nokia through Telstra, sending it through to the Samsung on an Optus network. They just talk naturally together, and that's no different here, what we're talking about. Because of the back of that standard, it allows the invoice to go seamlessly through to your supply chain, through your supply partner. The other piece in the middle of the only bit of infrastructure exists is like an electronic yellow pages, as I would refer to it as. It just tells the supplier what's the digital address of the buyer, so that they know they can connect up through their software systems. Simple as that. The other pieces in the network are what we call access points. They're at corner 2 and 3 down the bottom. And a good example of that is LucaPlus, who Ray will talk shortly. So they're there to actually move that data through the network. So they play an important part to make sure that that network, as I said before, is operating 24/7. At a simplest level, you would just need to have one of those access points connected to your software solution, and we'll see some examples shortly from Clinton and Ray. That's as simple as you can get it, and I'm sure you'll walk away here saying, I couldn't believe it's that simple. It's not a sophisticated system. Yes, maybe at the large end of town and big business, there's a high degree of sophistication required there, but as a small business, it's not too bad. Last one I'm going to wrap up on is where we are today. So on the last slide, the last nearly 2 years since that decision was taken, what have we been doing is firstly providing the specification for the software companies in Australia. So late in 2019 that was provided, and companies like LucaPlus, Myob had been then started to build and getting ready for their clients e-invoicing solution that people can use. At the same time, we started accrediting those access points. So we know when businesses are ready to onboard onto the network, we've got a strong foundation. We've got 23 at the moment, which is fantastic. And therefore, we've got a very healthy position for businesses and government in Australia to come on board. Kate mentioned that Commonwealth Government has now got a mandate. I'm pleased to say we've now got 6 agencies already ready to go and receiving invoices already. We've paid over $1 million, it could be 2 million by now, I haven't got the latest stats, in 5 days. So it is working. Suppliers to government are starting to get paid in the 5 days, which is fantastic. And that's only going to grow. We've got to have the mandate in place by middle of next year. However, we've got a very ambitious goal to have about 80% of the capacity ready by June this year. We may struggle a bit, I reckon, to hit that target, but we're working hard to go as close as possible. So you'll see that in the main, most of government will be ready to receive your invoices. Likewise, New South Wales are going great guns in terms of having a significant number of their agencies also able to receive invoices. Some of the other states are at proof of concept stage. But government, the Treasury is actually consulting with states and territories at the moment about as to what mandate or adoption rate they might have. So stay tuned for that response. Equally, Treasury is talking to small business and the stakeholders in that sector to understand what are the options for a possible mandate in that space. We won't probably hear the results of that consultation till later in, this year, but certainly watching that very closely. The third catalyst I see why 2021 is going to be a really fantastic year is that we're now starting to see those software solutions coming into the market. We've already seen some early adopters last year, but really we're seeing it on a large scale now this year, and really pleased. Myob will be part of that, and you'll hear from Clinton very shortly. The other thing we're seeing and noticing is a lot of partnerships happening between different solutions, and what that does is enables it, so it makes the experience for business to be much more streamlined and much easier to adopt invoicing, because already the software is ready, the access point which you need is integrated or partnered with, and so the hard work you might have to do to find different parties is already done for you, and you have therefore got a much smoother transition to e-invoicing. I'm going to stop there, and I don't know if I'm taking questions now, Daniela, or at the end. I'm open to what people would like to do.
Thank you, Mark. We've received a few questions for you to answer. I've chosen the top 4. Why don't we kick off by looking at question number 1. How does e-invoicing support better cash flow? Okay,
yep. On a couple of levels, obviously we're taking away the manual intervention. That's the most obvious impediment to get cash flow or the payment of that invoice quicker. And I gave that case study of BOC Gas. It gives certainty also in the relationship between the buyer and the seller, so that they know they're actually what they're dealing with the invoice. It's going to be accurate each time. They build confidence into that relationship, so they're able to pay with confidence to that person. They don't have to do a whole bunch of other quality checks with the invoice before they make the payment. So that's probably the biggest benefit invoicing will provide.
Thank you, Mark. Question number 2. Is it envisaged that e-invoicing will or can authenticate invoices and therefore be used to aid funding?
Good question, interesting question. So in terms of authentication, so yes, we do authentication process called Know Your Client. So this is about ensuring that when an invoice is sent through the system, the processes and the process we have in place ensures that there is a check to see that the person is who they say they are. So when you're receiving that invoice, you've got a higher degree of confidence that it has been checked out prior. Yes, we always though recommend you need to make sure buyer beware, of course, even though we're removing a lot of the email issues and other associated issues with that. It's always good to ensure you don't dismiss having quality controls in your processing of a payment, and that an invoice or any sort of payments you might be making, we would always say the same. Can it be used to aid funding? Look, it's early days for invoicing and really communicating how it would be useful. We have a thing in the ATO in our tax area where large business have like a compliance framework we operate with them, and we're looking at how invoicing will assist them in meeting that compliance framework, because it gives certainty to us as administrators of the tax system that the processes and information in the network is accurate and we can rely upon that. So it's a bit early for me to answer that with any confidence, but I certainly think it's going to be a positive.
And perhaps maybe question 3 and 4, I know you've spoken about it throughout your presentation. Maybe we could consolidate those 2 together. And question 3 and 4 around why the ATO is involved. What's your take on it? And you've touched upon that a little bit. And its impulsiveness to business.
Yeah, thank you, Danny. First question I get every single time is about why is the ATO involved? And look, and it's coming through in the consultation, Treasury telling me as well, is that people just don't appreciate the role the ATO plays in the business economy. Right. And what we say there is we've had a lot of experience dealing with software developers and also the accounting profession. Both of those are key enablers to e-invoicing and businesses in doing business. So through those relationships, we think we can provide a very solid delivery of e-invoicing. And examples that we would call upon is our experience in delivering things like SuperStream, single touch payroll. Obviously last year we did JobKeeper and other stimulus packages we've rolled out with the support of the software industry, support of the tax agents, bookkeepers, and that's probably one of the reasons why we feel we're well placed to support it. But yes, people have a perception that we're there from a tax perspective. I can assure people that we don't actually have anything to do with the invoices. We actually govern the network and making sure that the access points are doing what they're supposed to be doing, but the invoice data and information is, what's the word, we haven't got any transparency of that. So that's, I'd reinforce that point. The one on compulsory or mandate, I can't really comment. I can't predict what the government might decide. They're still going through a consultation on that. Like I said, we won't actually know the answer to that till they've considered all that consultation, and it's probably more towards middle of this year before we'll get an answer. So sorry, I can't give you more detail at this stage.
That's okay, Mark. Well, thank you for your time today. There's a few questions in our chat, but if we get time towards the end, I might just ask if we've got time for you to answer them. If not, I'm sure Mark will be happy to answer people's questions after the event. So thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Quinton Eidelman from Myob. Quinton is a product manager at Myob. He has 6 years working at Myob and has worked closely with small businesses and partners across Australia and New Zealand. Over to you, Quinton. How are you today?
Yeah, thanks, Daniela. Great to be here. Hey, everyone. Quick question, Daniela. How much time do I have? I'm just lost track. Not too sure.
I think you've
20
got
minutes
about
or so?
15, 20 minutes. Yeah,
20
correct.
minutes. Okay, perfect. Right, so let me just share my screen here.
No problems.
All right, so before I get into the demo, I wanted to just highlight two of the stats that Kate mentioned from the recent Myob Small Business Survey, as these really stand out for me. And the first is that 53% of respondents support mandating B2B e-invoicing. In the case of sole traders, it rises to 61%. And this makes sense to me because in many cases, it's the sole traders who are most susceptible to cash flow shortfalls. And they're clearly looking for e-invoicing to help them with their cash flow challenges. And the second standout is how half of the respondents, those with websites, estimate that switching to e-invoicing will save them the equivalent of 1 week per year. I mean, that's a lot of time that can be spent on more valuable activities rather than things like rekeying invoices from suppliers. Okay, so let's just jump into the demo here. So the Myob e-invoicing beta release is available today for early access participants. And I'll be doing a live demo using one of our test environments. And no, I'm not nervous at all. I mean, what can go wrong in a test environment? But let's go for it. Let's go live rather than a video if we can, right? Okay, so I have got in front of you the Myob Essentials platform. And let's just, oh, that's okay. The first thing you need to do is to go and sign up for invoicing, right? And we're going to do that from our settings screen. All right, so on this e-invoicing tab, there is a sign up button. And when I click on that, it takes me to a provider selection screen. So this is where you are able to select the e-invoicing provider that best suits your business. If I click on LucaPlus, I see a page with more detail, right, about the LucaPlus service. And if you're not alone or you you're not alone late at night, then you can watch the video all about the terrifying invoicing monster that E-invoicing will be slaying. All right. So I want to go sign up. I click on this Learn More button. And this is where I complete the short sign-up process. I can select my plan. LucaPlus offers a few plans there. And this sign-up process includes a verification of your, like an identity verification of your organization, for example, through a bank statement or a tax return. And this identity verification is an important step as it ensures that invoices, as Mark mentioned, that invoices are sent and received by the intended party. So it's making it much harder to spoof than using an email address. And that's why improved security is always listed as such a key benefit of e-invoicing. And given LucaPlus is an accredited Payroll access point, you can be sure your data is secure. And yeah, for those that aren't aware, look, Mark mentioned it, but Payroll is the e-invoicing messaging standard that has been adopted in Australia and New Zealand. So it's not about infrastructure, it's mostly about messaging standard. All right. So once I have signed up to my provider, then I want to go and send my first invoice. And before I go ahead and do that, I need to capture certain information about my business, about my customer that I'm sending my invoice to. So in this case, I'm going to be sending an e-invoice to ANZ Stationery Supplies. Right, so let me pop into that contact record. And the most important thing to make sure of is that I have captured the valid ABN, an ABN for my customer. The routing through Payroll is mostly done through ABN in Australia and NZBN in New Zealand. So without an ABN or NZBN, I can't send an e-invoice. And so you can see I've captured that ABN there, and the software does a check to the ABN lookup service, making sure that yes, this is a valid ABN. So that's all good. I also need to make sure that my own business's ABN is captured correctly, and that's done in the business details part of the software, address, etc. Because again, without my own ABN or NZBN, I won't be able to send an invoice or sign up. Okay, so now that I have validated my ABN information for my customer, I'm going to go ahead and create my invoice. Very straightforward, no different to creating a traditional invoice. So there we go, create invoice. And obviously I need to first select my customer, which is ANZ Stationery Supplies. And again, our software pulls in a little status indicator there showing me that yes, the ABN that I'd captured is still valid. It's doing the real-time lookup, and that's the important one there. So in this case, let's say I am doing some refurbishment work for the air cons. And you'll notice that, yeah, so pretty straightforward. It's the same as a traditional invoice, but the difference now you'll see is that there is a new Send E-invoice button at the bottom of the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. And once I do, I get the opportunity to attach any supporting documentation that I may want to send along with the e-invoice. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and select my timesheet, just an example, and attach that in there. All right, and then I go and send off the invoice. And that's it, sent successfully. So no fussing with PDFs, no writing up emails. The invoice now just gets sent through to LucaPlus, who in this case was my invoicing provider that I had signed up with. And as Mark showed earlier, goes through the Payroll network and straight into the financial system of ANZ Stationery Supplies. Okay, they contacted me, they let me know they can receive invoices, and yes, so it's been routed through to their system. Now, if the recipient is a government department, then the beauty of an e-invoice is that their ERP can automatically validate the details against their purchase order and almost instantly flag it for approval to be paid. And that's why they are able to pay off e-invoices within that 5 days. You'll also be able to see the delivery and activity status of your e-invoice as it moves through your customer's financial system, and that's what this activity column will show. And in fact, that's what we're working on as we speak. All right, so let's jump back here to the slide. So as I mentioned earlier, right, like what I've just demoed is available for our e-invoicing early access participants. So if you use MYB Account Right or MYB Essentials and you supply to government agencies, then yeah, please sign up. That's the URL above there. And if you're not already an MYB user, then I've also actually got some great news. It was touched on earlier, but for those of you that are based in Victoria, the Victorian government has launched the small business, what they're calling digital adaptation program. And that's designed to assist sole traders, micro and small Victorian businesses to adapt to a digital operating environment. Programs will support customers taking up new software or extending their use of existing software, like in the case of e-invoicing. So eligible businesses will receive a rebate of $1,200 against products from certain suppliers, and MYB is one of these suppliers. So registered businesses will also be able to participate in free digital adaptation workshops and seminars offered through to the end of March 2021. So your first step is to determine if you qualify for this rebate and sign up for MYB. And as more organizations are able to receive e-invoices, then you'll be ready to take advantage directly through the MYB software. So I think, yeah, Daniela, I think we've got some questions that were sent earlier.
Yes, I do. Just one moment.
Yep. I think I've got them over here.
Yes, fantastic. Thank you for that. Very insightful there, Clinton, and particularly about navigating through the app itself. And some questions for you. Number one, when will MYB be able to receive e-invoices?
Yeah, so we are expecting to release e-invoice sending to all customers in late March. And as I mentioned, this will include handling of the system-generated e-invoice statuses that are received from the buyer, also activity history within the invoice, among others. And then we'll be building receiving capability in Q2. Yep.
Fantastic.
That's what our roadmap is looking like. Yep.
Thank you, Clinton. Question number two, how does e-invoicing work for an existing MYB user or a non-MYB customer?
Yep. So we already offer electronic invoicing from MYB to MYB businesses today, and this will continue. That's not going to change. In the case of non-MYB customers, well, the beauty of e-invoicing is that the sending and receiving systems, they don't need to be the same software. So MYB suppliers will be able to send e-invoices to any non-MYB software that is able to receive them. So like in the case of ANZ Stationery Supplies, they told me that their software, the accounting software, can receive e-invoices, and so I was able to send them one. Yeah.
Thank you, Clinton. And number three was a popular question amongst attendees. Which MYB products actually support e-invoicing?
Yep, so e-invoicing will be available in Account Right and Essentials. It is important that to realize that, recognize that in the case of Account Right, you'd need to open your file in Account Right browser to actually send and to track the e-invoice. So the browser interface has been released to all Account Right customers a month or so ago, a month or two ago, yeah, so you need to click that button to open your file in the browser, and that's where the e-invoice functionality will be initially.
Thank you, Clinton. And number 4, the big question's been thrown out by our attendees. What does the e-invoicing pricing model look like for existing and new Myob customers?
Yes, I'll take that first part. Look, Myob doesn't charge anything extra for the ability to e-invoice. If you do pay a fee, that's determined by your e-invoicing provider, and it depends on the pricing plan that you've selected. Ray, you probably have more details on from a LucaPlus perspective.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Would you like me to talk about now, or maybe later to combine with the LucaPlus?
Well, we could actually wait to respond to the question for part 2. That's a good idea. Why don't we do that? That's not a problem. Well, thank you, Clinton. Very valuable there. I'm sure we've got some questions in our chat for you as well. So thank you. I'm sure you'll have the ability to respond to those after the event. So thanks once again.
Yeah, there was actually one that caught my eye that I think someone was asking, you know, if you're based out in regional Australia or New Zealand, and you know, you don't, how will you be able to send an e-invoice once it becomes mandated? So the mandating is about government departments receiving the ability to receive an e-invoice. So that's what is being mandated. What's not being mandated is the prohibiting of sending a traditional e-invoice to government. So it's just that they need to accept both by that date. Yeah. So for those that are in the regions, they can continue sending traditional invoices.
Well, thank you, Clinton, for answering that question through our chat today. Our final speaker for today is Ray, our co-founder and CEO at LucaPlus. Ray has experience in both commercial and public accounting industries, including top 500 companies, other businesses and taxation accounting firms. Ray was part of a focus group on fintech digital transformation in Australia run by CPA Australia. Thanks for joining us today, Ray. How are you?
Thanks, Daniela. Thank you for the introduction. Yeah, I want to say thank you to all of you to stay until the last moment. And also want to say thank you to all the previous presenters, Kate, Mark, and Clinton. You guys have done an amazing job to present everything with very strong stats to show there's really a need and demand for business to adopt e-invoicing, because as what we can see, business is actually facing a lot of challenges in the ecosystem at the moment. So as a software service providers, LucaPlus and Myob, I think it's our job to really present to them that there's a very innovative, nice tools, digital tools to help them to achieve those goals and to achieve also to overcome those challenges. So I think I'm going to give your brain a rest, because you already have received a lot of numbers and stats. I will probably talk about no numbers and no stats for the last moment. So if we jump to the next slide, thanks, Daniela. So yes, you can. So the 3 major topics I'm going to talk about today. I'll quickly introduce our people and our business, and secondly, I would like to talk about what we believe what the future is going to be like with e-invoicing adoption. And in the end, I think it makes more sense for us to present you with a couple of current major features, so you understand more about how we can actually help business to achieve those goals and overcome those challenges. So yeah, let's get started. So yeah, the next slide. So our business is actually are categorized into 3 major areas. Go-to-market. So GTM, in the GTM teams, it's a combination of accounting expert, marketing expert, and business expert. So we know where the pain points are, and we actually help to design a very simple, user-friendly products. And then we also know who are actually our target audience. and then with a business expert, they help us to execute our strategy and plans properly and make sure we can achieve our milestones on time. And in the product team, it's a combination of IT experts that have experience in IT product engineering and also design. So to ensure that we can build a stable, beautiful, better and faster product for our users. And with and in the end, with investment and advisor team, so we have people coming from CPA Australia, bring resources to us, and also helping us to raise funds at the beginning. So which is very helpful to support our business at the early stage. And if we jump to the next slide, so I'd like to talk about, this is at LucaPlus, this is actually what we do well. So we actually provide an e-invoicing solutions to business that help them to create a financially stable business, easy cash flow, and in the end, resulting in potential creating customers and business for life. And we always aim to provide a better, cheaper, faster solutions for them. So make sure that they can actually grow faster. And also LucaPlus product is actually an e-invoice payment platform that tailored design to ease cash flow for business. So they can get paid on time, get paid faster, and we help them to save money and more time to reduce their operation cost. And also at the same time, to protect them from invoice fraud. So if we go to the next slide, thanks, Daniela. Yep. And in this slide, what I would like to talk about is what we believe what the future is going to be like with e-invoicing adoption. So, so what we believe is what will happen after e-invoice have been adopted by business. We believe it will actually enhance trust and improve transparencies and the relationship for businesses. Because as we all know, e-invoice is actually a network system, and it's like a network ledger system. So at LucaPlus, the e-invoicing solutions we actually use blockchain technology. So we actually do a further verification and encryption for all the financial transactions, which means when all the business transact with each other in this kind of environment, and all the financial transactions will become the single source of truth for businesses. Therefore, at LucaPlus, it gives us more confidence to provide even more further solutions, such as the new features we have called LucaPay as a payment solutions for business to ensure that they get paid 100% on time. So that actually leads to us to help business achieve these three goals: is cash flow, create a financial stable business, and in the end, create customers and business for life. So you're probably wondering, how do I actually do that? So imagine one day if your supplier actually came to you saying that, look, Ray, I will send all my future invoices to you. And at the same time, I will actually do all the bookkeeping for you when I send my e-invoices. Also, if we all agree with this LucaPay solutions, we'll get paid from LucaPay. I don't have to chase up the late payments with you anymore. So we help to eliminate the debtor collection functions. So what's the suppliers in that case will guarantee that you get paid on time and get paid faster. So in the end, that's why we think we actually improve the relationship between you and your suppliers. So we at the same time enhance the trust and also transparencies between you and your suppliers. And of course, it makes sense once the cash flow has been eased and business will get paid on time, and we'll be able to create financial stable business and create customers and business for life. That's what they say, happy customers, happy life, or happy suppliers, happy life. Similar concept to happy wife, happy life, I guess, right? So yeah, or not. Okay, so on the next slide, I hope everything makes more sense after we explain the product and features. So at LucaPlus, we actually have these two amazing innovative features. So we are now LucaPlus E-invoicing network, as what the previous presenters mentioned about. E-invoice is about transfer invoice data straight away between suppliers and customers' financial systems. And once both parties adopted these solutions, your suppliers actually perform the bookkeeping for you. And it saves time and money when your suppliers send you invoices as e-invoices format. And also Mark also mentioned the government's actually planning to mandate e-invoices for business, although we don't know when, but yeah, I think this is actually coming. And at the same time, as I mentioned before, once business adopt e-invoicing solutions, it actually eliminates the invoice fraud, because you no longer need to rely on the invoice information coming from emails. So for example, as a LucaPlus e-invoicing solutions, when you receive that invoice from your suppliers, we actually send you an attachment along with that transaction as well. So when you see that means when you see the transactions land into your, let's say, Myob system, you'll be able to see these attachments appear. So 100% is reliable, secure, and you don't have to have a doubt about, okay, is that coming from a scammer or a hacker? So, and then what we also have this LucaPay features. It's an innovative B2B buy now and pay later solutions. And it will guarantee that a supplier can get paid 100% on time on the date. That way it helps to ease cash flow for you as a customers as well, because we allow you to pay us through a full installments payments. So in that case, as I mentioned, we eliminate the debtor collections forever. So on the next slide, I'd like to give you guys a quick screenshot about what our product looks like. So as you can see from the receivable page, I don't know whether you guys can see it properly. There's different status of the invoice. That's what we call the full life cycle of the invoice transaction. So you will be able to see when invoice gets sent out, and confirmed means your invoice actually got entered and received by your customer. And also it will tell you whether it gets paid or reconciled against your financial or their financial accounting system. And also, which means in that case, when it gets close to the due date, if you see the action button there, you can actually choose if you want to adopt the LucaPay solutions to get paid on time. If your customers also having a cash flow issues, and both parties can definitely make an agreement to adopt these solutions. So in that case, we are really helping business to ease cash flows, enhance trust, and improve the relationship within the ecosystem. So yeah, that's it. That's pretty much about us and the product. So I guess there's a Q&A session, right, Daniela?
Thank you, Ray, for that insightful overview of LucaPlus, the team, and its product and digital stack that we've got at the moment. We've got 3 questions which I thought were quite interesting, particularly the first one. A few people asked this question. Does this mean we can no longer use direct deposits?
No, it doesn't mean that at all. So because e-invoicing is not like a payment solutions, so they can still choose if they want to make direct deposit or adopt other payment solutions.
Thank you, Ray. And number 2, what is the major change in accounting with e-invoicing from your perspective?
Well, life will certainly become better and easier. Yeah, because I'll take me as an example, and also one of our users. So like me, because although I'm the CEO, I also look after the finance as well. We don't do bookkeeping at all, because 90% of our suppliers actually adopt e-invoicing solutions. So I just sit there, see all the transactions coming through, and monitor and make sure they actually has got the right information and they make a decision about whether I want to pay for it or not. Of course, most of the time I will pay for it on time, right? But yeah, so it really saves a lot of time for me to really help the business grow and also making better decisions about, okay, where should we go next, right? Same thing apply to the accountants, I think, because as you mentioned before, I'm actually coming from an accounting background. So once all the clients or majority of the business have adopted e-invoicing as a solution, the batch will get submitted on time because everything's automatic. You don't have to worry about, okay, there's a few transactions haven't been reconciled because it will be, because everything will be entered into your systems straight away. And also at the same time, which means batch will get submitted on time. Same with when you deal with doing reconciliation with chart of accounts, when you do the business tax return for your clients. That will actually make everything more efficient because, again, everything is automatic. So, yeah, so for accountants, I think definitely life will be much easier, and they can actually save more energy and to help the decision makers to grow quicker, because they can certainly spend the time on, let's say, doing more report analysis, or help with identify the issues in the product production, right? Things like that.
So essentially a game changer, right, Ray?
Correct, yeah.
And the last question, this is kind of tying into the question that Clinton was also asked. How would e-invoicing work for smaller businesses or individuals who may not have access to an accounting software, or who already do?
Yep, okay. Yeah, I think for those ones that still prefer to do a lot of the works with Excel sheet, but still want to enjoy the e-invoice functions, as at LucaPlus, we do have a different product called Solo Plan. That's actually give like sole traders, freelancers a chance to send out e-invoices if they don't have an accounting system to use. So that costs about $10 per month, but you can send unlimited e-invoices to your customers and also receive e-invoices as a bill to pay as well. So yeah.
Thank you, Ray. And I think we've got 5 minutes left. I may just have a look at the Q&A chats from our attendees in case we have time to answer them. We'll just have a look at a couple of them. Maybe are you still there with us, Kate?
Yep, I sure am.
You spoke briefly about our global position. You actually went into a bit of detail with our global positioning, and one of the questions was, will this be established in South America, Peru, Bolivia? An indication of when? Are we privy to such information of that detail?
Look, we are, and I don't have it with me right now, but it's certainly true that they're escalating in that space. We know that, you know, a number of countries, you know, Brazil and others have been really ahead of the game, but the rest of South America is catching up. Now, I just don't have it with me, but, you know, you can access it on the website. The thing that's really interesting about e-invoicing at the moment is right around the world, you know, whether it's, you know, China or India, you know, Japan is mandating, Indonesia is, you know, is in test phases and so on. Yep, it's happening everywhere. So we've got to make sure that we're ahead of the game, not behind it.
Sure. Thank you, Kate. And maybe Kate or Mark, you may want to respond to this one. Will legislation aim to incorporate payments from offshore buyers?
Thanks, Daniel. I'll take that one, Kate, if you can. Before I do, just on the previous one, yes, I'm pretty sure Bolivia and Peru are already. Most South American countries are, but they're definitely right at the moment. They're not all PEPL's standard countries. They have bespoke standards in their relevant countries, or there's a couple have got the same. So at the moment, they're not fully interoperable with Australian in their supply chain, but that's what we're looking for into the future as more and more countries, we looked at how we can make it interoperable and therefore open up global trade. Similar question, I suppose, that one about legislation. Hi, Anna, nice to hear from you. We probably wouldn't, given that it'd be imposing a law upon a non-resident company. We possibly could, but there's not a lot of precedent for that. And so I'm not too sure what part of the legislation you want around payments, and maybe it's trying to have them come in line with the payment times reporting maybe, or something like that. That would be ideal. On a positive, I suppose, my research indicates that a lot of countries, not all, but a number of countries do have faster payment times than that they do generally in Australia, which is a bit unfortunate, but depending where you are and what countries, they have fairly reasonable payment times, but obviously we're fast catching up to that.
Thank you, Mark. And I think the last one from Anna as well, it's about the difference in cost with international payments. Not sure if we can answer that straight away.
I'll have a crack. I think, Anna, you may be referring to here is if I'm dealing with international, are there extra payments? And the answer to that is no. The reason why, and I'll just qualify that, is if you're dealing with Myob, a solution, you're sending to your supply chain in Italy or somewhere where there is a PEPL standard, and you're dealing with a company over there, I might suggest you might be buying some Italian designer goods, Anna. And with that, you only pay whatever your access point plan might be, as suggested before. So the access to the PEPL network is free, but you have to have access via an access point. So whatever plan you're on there is the only costs you would incur.
Thank you, Mark. And maybe we'll grab a last one. Maybe this could kind of tie into three of you. Has there been a concern regarding the ability to send or receive invoices in remote locations with little or no internet connectivity? What does the future look like for those businesses if e-invoicing is mandated?
Fine, Kate, you're up your alley, do you reckon?
Look, I'm happy to take that on. Look, can I say that it's the absolute commitment of a whole range of people to overcome that. And to a large extent, we have, you don't need huge bandwidth for this. This isn't requiring streaming of video or whatever. You can make this work on pretty basic sort of internet connections. And as we know, right around Australia, between the various, on ground and Sky Masters and so on, the sort of internet spread, the internet connections spread we need on this exists in most places now, and will continue to increase. I'm sure we've all seen announcements of recent days. You always love Elon Musk, but views on how we can make broadband connections faster. But the reality is you don't need huge broadband connections for this sort of stuff, unless any of the rest of you want to make a comment there, because I'm happy for you to tell me I'm absolutely wrong, but there you go.
I think you're right, Kate. I mean, the other thing where I'm really interested and excited about is where the mobile app market might take us with e-invoicing, and that opens up another contact point through the telephony system, that telecommunication system that might where you've got some limitations with the internet, etc. So are talking to those sort of companies. Already a bunch who do e-invoicing, just not PEPL enabled just yet, but probably watch this space.
Yeah, and look, Mark, you'd know that from an ATO perspective, yes, there are a few places in Australia that just don't have internet connection at all, but they're not many now.
Yeah.
It's, it's really, it's really quite low.
Correct.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us today, particularly our speakers. I hope that our attendees are able to walk away with some further insights, the myths, the facts, some great stats to go back to that, your business, owners and also accountants and bookkeepers that help you do the books. Check out MYOB's new products. If you have any questions, post the event, please shoot them through to me or through LinkedIn. And to say thank you for attendees of taking their time out of their day today. We'll be sending an email or a message through LinkedIn with a special offer for you guys to start using e-invoicing immediately. So thank you everybody today. Thank you, Mark, Kate, thank you, Clinton, thank you, Ray, and everyone have a great day.